Awesome. Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout. Today we have James on board here today, and we met through an app. We just kind of to interview each other on the podcast. He asked to come on, so here we are. So James, tell us a little bit about you and your background.
So obviously my name's James. I am currently a quality specialist in steel manufacturing. But I have a background in welding, robotic welding and programming, carbon steel and stainless, defense contract work, farm equipment, and most recently I've started in pressure vessels.
Oh wow. How long have you been doing that for, James?
I've been in steel manufacturing since 2008.
Okay, cool. So about what, 12, almost 13 years now?
Yep, going on 13 here real soon.
Yeah, awesome. Did you do that straight out of school or?
Yeah, shortly. I tried college.
Yeah.
I didn't.
For everyone.
No, it just wasn't for me. So I stopped that. I joined the workforce, and yeah, that's all she wrote. I tried concrete. That was rough. So I thought steel would be easier, I guess. I don't know why, but decisions you make when you're 20, right?
Whatever. You don't really know what you want to do when you're 20.
Yeah. Whatever.
No. Where are you calling in from today?
From Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. How's the weather over there today, man?
It was cold. It was 6 degrees this morning when I drove to work.
And that's 6 Fahrenheit. Wow.
Yeah.
That's cold.
Yeah, that's in cold. A car with no heat too. It was awesome. It's great.
Oh, that's very cold. Okay, yeah. Well, that takes us into some burnout. Let's talk about what is it that you define burnout as, James?
So, to me, I think burnout might be a little bit different for me because I also deal with depression and anxiety. So there's that's constantly just going on with me.
Yeah.
But to me, I think I would define burnout as it's the I'm done point. Right. I don't mean I've had a rough day and I need to take a break. It's a point where you wake up and you're already bitter about going to work. Every small problem is a mountain. And there's just, it doesn't just stop there though. Every moment becomes this overwhelming sense of just failure, incompetence. And for me, that quickly bleeds into nearly every aspect of my life.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if I'm burned out at work, it carries with me. So,
can you tell us about a few of maybe one of the times that kind of sticks out to you the most around when you felt this burnout?
Yeah, well, I mean, burnout's what actually caused me to leave my last job. I went there because I was offered more money and I was like, awesome, cool, I can do that. And what ended up happening was, spoiler alert, they don't exist anymore. But I was hired on to be a quality tech there. And what had happened is due to cuts, they eventually got rid of everybody else in my department except for me. Which meant I was working 60, 70 hours a week, driving at times. I had one day I started at 3 a.m. I took a 4-hour drive up to Escanaba, Michigan, which is beautiful. I put in a 9 or 10-hour day there sorting parts that we had messed up for one of our customers.
Yeah.
And then I drove 4 hours back home because they wouldn't pay for a hotel. And I did that for 12 weeks straight, where my only day off was working 6 hours on a Sunday. That was my downtime.
Wow.
And it got to the point where a job opportunity came along where I'm at with my current employer for less money, significantly less hours, and I just took it. Because I couldn't do it anymore. It was just too much. I would literally just drive home, take a 6-hour nap, and go back to work.
Wow.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, the money was good, but I couldn't spend it. I couldn't see my family. I I'm gonna do anything. And I was just like, I'm done. And since that moment, I don't work 60 hours a week. You can't make me. I won't do it anymore. It's I will figure out how to get by before I'll work 60 hours a week again.
Yeah.
Because it's not worth it.
No, it's not. So looking back on that, what have you learned? Obviously that's one of probably a few times that you felt burned out, as we all go through burnout constantly. The thing that we constantly, there's different stages, different states, different levels of burnout. As you even said already, you suffer from depression and anxiety. So, for some, like, that can just be a state of burnout that they kind of live with, and they learn to kind of work through it and progress through it. And, and you want to constantly, learn the tools to be able to work through it. So what have you learned that helps you to, one, overcome that, but two, also prevent it from happening again now?
Yeah. So it happens from time to time now. And about the only thing that I can say that works for me is I don't often call in physically sick to work anymore, because it's easier to work through a cold than it is to work through burnout. But what I do find is that I take days off of work just for myself. I just a week ago, I called in for a mental health day because I needed it. I woke up and I was just, I got out of bed and I was just like, not today. I can't. Nope. If I go to work today, it's going to ruin the rest of the week for me.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'll take the demerit or whatever, and I'll figure it out. But the other thing that I do, I kind of started it 2 years ago. I had a health scare that put me in the ICU for 48 hours.
Oh, wow.
And I was in the hospital for 4.5, 5 days. In that time, I was a smoker at the time, obviously not allowed to have cigarettes in a hospital. So, I had tried quitting for off and on for 6 years before that, but I don't know what it was about those 4 or 5 days or what, but it stuck. So I got out of the hospital, I quit smoking. It's been 2 years and 15 days.
Well done.
Since I've had a cigarette, but that was kind of the catalyst for me to just start. It sounds bad. I don't know why I wasn't taking initiative before. I don't know why it took that for me to be like, okay, I'm going to start doing these things now. But I that was the catalyst for me to start a self-care regimen.
Yeah.
And so it's a work in progress. I got some big things on there that I try to do, as often. For example, I got what I call is a no list.
Yeah.
It's things I'm just going to say no to.
Yeah.
Blanket across the board. I'm not going to do it, And first, I mean, it's different for everybody. For me, I got some pretty trivial stuff on there. For example, I don't borrow things from people.
Yep.
Not because I don't take care of them, but because I never get it back to them.
Yeah.
And then that gives me anxiety every time I see it sitting on the shelf when I walk by, and it just eats at me in the back of my head constantly. So no, I don't do that anymore. The other thing, and I don't know why. So my wife and my mother-in-law lives with us, and they are both Latin. And I don't know what it is. And it's not a racist thing. It's not a stereotype thing. They have all of their conversations at 11. Even if they're agreeing with each other, man, it is just loud,
Yep.
right?
It's like Chinese as well. It sounds like they're screaming at each other all the time.
Yeah. And I don't know why, but they can be having a normal conversation, and just the level that they're having it at makes me feel like there's tension in the air.
Yeah.
And so obviously I can't say no to being around my family, and that's not something that they're going to easily change. So, it's this constant checks and balance of, okay, I'm going to remove myself from that situation for a little bit, you know? The other thing that I try to do is, with everything going on in my life, I burn both ends of the candle 5 to 6 days a week. That's just the way it is. So I try to, at least one day a week, sleep until I just naturally wake up.
Yeah.
I think that I can't medically explain why that works great for me, but just sleeping and not waking up to an alarm and sleeping until you're rested is phenomenal. The other thing I try to do is I try to make an hour a day for myself to do something that I get enjoyment from.
Yeah.
Right now that's podcasting. Before that, it was preparing for my D&D campaign or video games or Twitch, or just an hour to relax, unwind, and unpack and forget the day. And the hardest one, I think, is, I got it on my list as I just call it move on.
Yeah.
And I try to give myself the okay and the forgiveness to move on from things that keep me down. Perhaps it's I've moved on from friends, I've moved on from family, I've moved on from hobbies. If it's something that's, it doesn't have to be necessarily helping me. It just can't be hindering me.
Yeah.
And if it's something that's going to be permanently in my life, or in my life for a significant amount of time, and it's not good for me, then it's got to go.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do that. You see a lot of people do it. They keep, toxic people around them for whatever reason. And and when you do that, all that forces you to do is live in their world.
Yeah.
And every problem becomes your problem. And you can't fix everybody else. And you need to be okay with that. Because the minute everybody's problems becomes your problems, you never really address your problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard to do that because you feel like you're letting people down.
And then you start to get anxious about it. You start to get fear of what all the things of what are they thinking, what are they doing.
Right, exactly.
You start to use negative language. You start to just self-destruct yourself.
Yeah.
In turn, I like to call it, with my clients, I like to call it firing things and people.
Yes.
Fire them from your life. That doesn't mean that they don't come back, but it means you need to be fired for this interim time. Maybe it's that you just can't deal with it, or maybe it's that, it's something that you're just not in the right time for.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And so that's my list at the moment. And obviously, as you can tell, I'm not the smallest person in the world. So I don't have any fitness or health goals on there at the moment. But I've tried to put those things in the past, and it made the whole process fall apart.
Yeah.
So
my one, and what I like to also tell people in that is, obviously you have that routine. Have a morning, the morning routine is real important. The first thing that you do in the morning, so important. You remind yourself the things you're grateful for, so it primes your day, turns it straight into something. But then you just get up and move. And that, by being a part of your morning routine, some people like to do meditation, and I like to get up and move. I meditate kind of during my training times. I'll meditate on my motorcycle as well, but it's getting up and moving. And so that could, for you, example, you said you didn't have any fitness type stuff in there, just actually making it not as such of a fitness, but make it as I'm just going to get up, I'm going to move, whether it be I'm going to move across the house, or it be I'm going to move down the block. I'm going to move. And it just gets that heart going, and gets you feel those endorphins flowing. It makes you feel good. Just like when, you're doing that hour a day, the hour of power, as it's been known by, like Tony Robbins and stuff like that. He called it the hour of power, the dedicated hour that's just for you. But yeah, no, man, I love those different things, the taking care of yourself, the no list, the, taking the mental health day. It should be, I know the company my wife works here in New Zealand, they actually have it in their thing. Every so many months, I think it is, you get a recharge day, they call it. And so you
Yeah.
can literally it's put into your thing and it's there. It's a recharge day, and you can actually pre-book it. You can put it in there, or you can just, be like, hey, I need a recharge day. And
Yep.
it does. It comes in handy a lot.
Yeah, I think I don't know what it is with the states and mental health. We're working on it. But yeah, it's mental health and paternity leave over here, man.
Yeah, well, over here in New Zealand, we have lots of. I'm originally from California, so I've got lots of family over there. My uncle owns a business. He's like, "How do you guys survive over there? You're paying money for constantly. Nobody's ever at work." I'm like, "Yeah, but when we do work, we get a hell of a lot more done than what they're getting over there."
Yep,
and
absolutely.
we're not going through staff as quickly. But yeah. So James, tell me. I believe people have an underlying why they do things. For me, for example, my why is that, I don't want to see other people go through pain. This is why this podcast got started, because I went through burnout and I don't want to see anybody else go through that pain. So I want them to get all the tools. I've got tons of them, but I love to learn others so that we can then amalgamate them. But I also recognize mine stems all the way back to my childhood. My why stems all the way back through. So I've always been a person that wants to create less pain in people's lives. So I believe that there is a underlying why that everybody has, whether they have identified it, know it, it's conscious, subconscious. What would you say, James, your why would be of what you do constantly and you have done for your entire life?
That's a big one. I think everyone's knee-jerk reaction to that question is going to be my family, right?
Or I
right?
want to help people. It's one of the two.
Right. Yeah, it is. I think for me, it's I find it rewarding when I can bring joy and happiness to other people. It's tough to explain. It's one of those things. I feel very creative, but I can't ever create anything. I feel like in my mind, I feel like I could be an artist.
Yeah.
I tried to learn how to paint and draw. I can't do it. I feel like I could be a musician. I can play a little bit of bass. I can play the tuba, but it's not, it's not going to be anything.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't know. It's kind of why I started my podcast. It's why I run. It's why I'm the dungeon master in D&D and not the player.
Yeah.
Because I get so much more enjoyment out of running the game for the players than I would playing the game.
Yeah.
My enjoyment is their enjoyment. It's, I don't know. That's the best answer I have right now. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that question before. And it's one that I'm going to chew on for a while.
That's a great answer for never being asked that question, because not even a lot of people can even identify that it's joy, or that it's like mine. It took me a while to actually figure out mine. So if we think about, and you applied that, wanting to bring joy and stuff, how does that apply in your welding and your quality control career?
So as I've progressed in that field, I went from somebody that so when I was in, we'll back it up, welding, I got joy from, I think that was more for just making things. Because at the time I wasn't necessarily making an end product. I was making something that I was going to have to give to somebody else to use. which meant if I did a poor job, I would make their day rougher.
Yeah.
And so when I do a good job, it makes their day easier.
Yep, brings joy
So,
to them, easier for them than the end customer. It's they're
right.
happy to have it. So yeah,
Exactly. I got the same thing from robotic programming. That
Yeah.
was one of those things where that job, like, it fell into my lap. I got laid off. They brought me back, and at that time I was just a guy. I was just a laborer. I was a metal finisher. I would do some welding when they had an open welder and stuff like that. And when things were slow, I would hang stuff on the paint line. I mean, whatever.
Learned a whole ton of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And then one day they're just like, "Oh, well, we're going to teach you how to run a robot." And they walked me over there, and, like, I mean, I'd been a gamer. I've done 3D modeling, and they're just like, "Oh, it works on like this." And I was like, "Oh, it works on a Cartesian coordinate system." And they're like, "Well, what does that mean?" "Oh, it's X, Y, Z, and ABC. It's got 6 axes and it rotates and does this." And they're just like, "Well, have you ever done this before?" And I'm like, "Well, not directly, but it works in a 3D world. I build things in a 3D world. It just, And so they're like, "Okay, well, you should become a programmer." And so then I just jumped into that, and that was fun because it starts off like, okay, well, when we run these parts, it takes 25 minutes. Okay, well, I can do it in 14 because I went through the program, and I made some adjustments and so I got, and that goes back to the making it easier for the next person. And now the guy running the robot doesn't have to wait as long. He's not standing around, which
creates more performance.
More performance, but when the right person gets into manufacturing, most of them hate standing around.
Yeah.
Most of them, the true welders and the true people that belong in those positions, love their craft.
Yeah.
And they love to do it. And when you put them at a station where they do something for 2 minutes and then they have to wait for 20 minutes to do something else, it aggravates them to no end. And you lose those people. So my why in the workplace.
Yeah, that's the one, man. Sorry about that. Dog
no.
decided it wanted to throw up.
Yeah. So moving past welding and into quality, is as much as you would think in a manufacturing setting, quality are the people that just go, yes, it's good, no, it's bad. 9 times out of 10, or at least in my experience, they end up being the person that fixes the problem. They're not so much just that yes, no person. They're the person that goes, no, but here's why, and here's how you should go about fixing it. Let's go out to your workstation and review what's going on. Maybe we need to modify your fixture. Maybe you need to try different welding settings and stuff like that. Weld hotter, weld colder, do this procedure differently. So again, helping people, be better, getting joy from it. But most recently I've gotten more into writing ISO procedures and standard operating procedures.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why I'm good at it. I don't like doing it, but I'm good at it. It is what it is. But it's one of those things that when I started in welding, it was in a family-owned business. About 150 people. And all upper management was a family. And what that meant is they didn't really document anything. So everything was what we call in the business as tribal knowledge. So when the person that had been in the company for 20 years leaves, he takes all that know-how with him. And they didn't do a good job of writing anything down. So when you came into a problem, you were left as the employee to either and this is poor culture on their part, but you were left to either do nothing and then get yelled at for having poor production, or try your hand at making something that worked and then roll the dice on either it working or you getting yelled at for making bad parts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the answer to that, you know, is training and SOPs and all of that. So
how do you apply the why to writing SOPs?
Well, it goes so.
And the reason I ask these is because these are some of the key things that I believe help prevent and overcome burnout. They're the things that can take us from dreading every day or even dreading doing 60 hours a week to going, shit, yeah, I get to do 60 hours a week because it's fucking awesome.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. So for me, working at that place for 8 years, the one lesson it taught me was CYA, which is
cover your beep.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And an employee's best tool is his SOPs.
Yeah.
Because it's the end all be all. When somebody comes down from upper management and they go, "Why did you do this thing?" You can pull out this piece of paper and go, "Because you told me to."
Yeah.
And spending 8 years getting yelled at for things that I had no idea I didn't know.
Yeah.
It bugged me. And so now I'm in a position to prevent that for other people, and B, streamline a process. Because I'm at a place again that's been around for 45 plus years, and they don't have a lot of stuff written down. We just had a gentleman retire that had been there for 44 years.
Yeah. Can
you imagine the wealth of knowledge that guy left with?
It's insane. It's absolutely
so they're in the we're in the process of, you know, trying to capture this as, you know, there's not too many young welders right now. I don't know what happened in between there, but most of the welders either seem to be 50 plus or around my age. I don't know. There's 20 years there where people are like, nah, I'm not going to weld.
My belief is that you lost the passion for what you do. Everybody started to get passionate about how much they earned instead of what the creation and they forgot why they're doing it. And in turn, they feel they're getting burned out quickly because they don't focus on that. They focus on the paycheck. And, you know, welders, I don't know how it is over there, but I know over here, unless you're one of those specialist welders, it's probably not a huge paying job until you move up into upper management. And so you lose the fact of you're bringing joy and creation to life. Instead you're focused on, fuck, I'm only getting paid $20 an hour or $25 or $30 an hour.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be on 100 an hour. And it's like, well, dude, you're creating something that somebody is. If you want to go do that, then okay, cool. You need to work your way up, but it's but you don't have those. Almost maybe they're too ambitious, and then I don't know what that is, but it is. It's very true. There's not as many trades running around anymore.
Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I do, and I mean it's one of those things where, you know, I hate this term, but I wear a lot of hats at my job.
There's nothing wrong with that. I run my own business. I wear a ton of hats.
Yeah. So it's, you know, there's definitely aspects of the job that irritate me. Not because I don't think that they necessarily irritate me because that I'm the one that has to do them. It's one of those things where it's not something quality should be doing. And it's one of those things that through the years and through the tribal knowledge, somehow this task of the business has been delegated to this person. And you're just left asking
So
why.
how do you prevent yourself from burning out with having, like, say, that task there that you constantly have to do?
So the big thing right now is I'm focusing on the end goal. I've been lucky enough to be able to talk to my boss, and we've made a plan, at least in our department, on kind of our 1 to 2 year plan here, and all my eggs are kind of in that basket, so it's a bit of a long goal,
Yeah.
but hopefully when that rolls around, we'll be in a situation where the job that I was hired to do initially 3 years ago, they brought me on. They said this aspect of your job should take about 2 to 5 hours a week. Reality, it takes about 35.
Yeah.
Because they nobody understood what went into it, so
Yeah.
that they made a bunch of changes to it and gave it to me.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, why is this taking so long? Well, because you didn't know what it took beforehand. You made a bunch of changes, and now here we are. So hopefully in 2 years we'll be in a situation where that task is automated.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha. Cool. Yeah. So put the goals in place in order to reduce the burnout. That's awesome.
Yep. And I'm lucky enough to work on a team of 4 guys, including my boss, and we're pretty good about sharing workload.
Yeah. So do the stuff that you love. Find the person that loves the stuff that you hate, and get them to do it.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, we each take an aspect of quality. One of them manages some product divisions, another one manages some other product divisions. I handle paperwork, SOPs, and calibration and certs and all that other stuff. But when one guy gets busy, the other 2 help out, stuff like that. So it's it's one of those things where we're not doing the same thing every day.
Yeah.
So there's at least some change in there, which I think everybody needs, because if you just show up and
you need change to grow, to be able to learn things. You need to have your core thing that you love to do, and you do that section, but then you're also able to help out with the other ones because it's going to help you in the one core thing that you are good at.
Yep.
So James, obviously you work in that building quality control kind of era, and as we've already discovered, there can be a lot of burnout because of just overworking and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But for listeners that say are in your industry, or listeners that can relate to you, what to feel like they're overworked or something like that, what is the number one piece of advice you would tell listeners that are around burnout, how to prevent it?
So that's tough. I mean, prior to this job, I would say find an employer with a good culture. Because an employer with a good culture, they're going to listen to their employees. And if you have a company that listens to the people that in the end of the day are the ones that make them their money, then you're already better off than most of the companies out there. Because I've worked for the companies that don't listen to their employees. It's a paycheck. Yeah, you might actually get paid a little bit more money to be stepped on for 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
But it's not worth it. It really isn't. Looking back on it as a young kid, in my early 20s, yeah, sure, the extra money was nice. Beer on the weekend. But yeah, in my current job,
it's not worth it in the long run. You're better off long term than short term. Yeah.
Since my new employer, now that I've found a place that has a great culture, and I can't say if it's just this place or the fact that it's an employee-owned company. So every person that gets a paycheck there is an owner of that company. We all have stocks in the company. So when the company does good, we do better.
Yeah.
So there's more the employees are invested in there because it's not just a paycheck.
Yeah, smart.
But after that, I would say, don't be afraid to propose change, because at the end of the day, it's not, if you're doing what you enjoy doing, it's not the work that's giving you burnout. It's all the unnecessary, ridiculous little things that get on your nerves, make your job harder, make your day longer, that cause you stress, that give you burnout. And some of those things you can't avoid. But for the most part, there's probably a better way to do what you're doing. There's probably a less stressful way to do what you're doing. There's probably a quicker way to do what you're doing. And don't be afraid to speak up and ask those questions. Because just because somebody's been a boss there for 30 or 40 years doesn't necessarily mean that they've thought about that situation the way you have.
Yeah.
You know, when I've done some Six Sigma and some lean stuff, and one of the things they always they give this example about a company that makes toothpaste is trying to solve the biggest problem as they keep shipping empty boxes with no toothpaste tubes in them to their vendors. And so they go and they hire an engineer and they hire a production specialist, and they develop this very elaborate optical sensor to visually check and weigh the box to make sure that there's a tube in it before it puts it on the pallet. And so they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this. Mm. And it works great. Except one day it breaks down. And they don't hear anything, you know? So they walk out on the floor, and what they find is that at the end of the conveyor belt, before the robot comes and grabs these boxes, somebody had placed a box fan. And the box fan was blowing the empty boxes off the conveyor belt. So all the best minds in the world came up with a $100,000 solution for a $12 problem.
Yeah.
And I mean, imagine all of the stress that went into that.
Yeah.
All the lost hours of sleep, the lost money.
Yeah.
Just to come out there and see a box fan at the end of a belt.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's a good, I mean, yeah, it's an extreme situation, but if you look for the box fan in everything that you do throughout the day, you can make your job easier. You can make your job less stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. Just look for those little things, eh? Look for those little tweaks and changes that you can do each day to just lift yourself up that little bit. That's all you need. So obviously you run a podcast as well, James.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that podcast real quick.
Yeah. So I started the What For podcast back in October, and that was my attempt to do two things. It was an attempt to educate myself on more people, mostly because I am a father of a 2-year-old son, and I realized that there is a lot of things in the world that I have a stance on, but I don't have an understanding of. And while the stance on it works great for me because I know where I stand, that doesn't bother me. I'm going to need to be able to educate my son on those subjects. Racism, gender identity, all of those big things. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. I know I don't have an issue with it. I know that I'm not racist. Right. But, my son, my wife's Latin.
Yeah.
There are some things he's going to experience that I've never experienced before.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, man. Because I feel like that's the thing going on in the world right now is people aren't open-minded enough to learn from other people.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That is awesome.
Yeah. So I just have people on from every walk of life. I don't know how many podcasts out there are doing it, but I have an open guest form. If you're listening to this and you want to be a guest, go to the website, be a guest, fill it out. I don't care.
What4podcast.com. That's awesome. So if you are listening and you want to be either on the podcast, on James's podcast, or on mine, obviously, as well, I'm open as well. My thing is this: how James got on here, literally just reached out, was like, "Hey, I want to jump on your podcast," and so I was like, "Sweet, cool, let's do it." But obviously, if you resonate with James, you want to just talk with him. Maybe something clicked with you, and you were like, "Oh my God, I need to talk to this guy," or you won't, then go to his website, what4podcast.com. And get in touch with him. So last question I'd like to ask James is, what is the one thing you'd tell viewers to prevent or counter burnout? I know we kind of went over this a little bit in your industry, but in general, what would be the one thing, then your number one thing that you do or that you'd recommend to prevent or counter burnout?
If you don't have some form of a self-care regimen, start one. You might not even be aware that you're already doing the aspects of one, but I think it's important to recognize what goes into that regimen, what you need individually in order to make your life easier. Like I mentioned earlier, and like you said, move on or fire things and people. You need to understand your limits and your expectations of yourself. And a self-care regimen helps you manage both of those things.
Very true. Very true. Even if you don't feel like you're being burned out, or you're like, "Hey, I'm totally 100% fine." Yeah, because it gets you to focus on that, on the things that you're doing, and where we focus, energy flows, as we know.
Absolutely.
If you focus on negative things, your energy is going to flow towards negativity, and you're going to get drained down. If you focus on positive things and uplifting things, you're going to get lifted up, and you're going to feel great. So yeah, no, I love that, James. So James, is there any last words that you'd like to say?
Oh man. Yeah. Kind of the theme of my podcast. But just in general, one thing that I enjoy doing is break bread with people. If sit down and have a meal with somebody that you don't necessarily always have a meal with. Have a genuine conversation with somebody. It could be a coworker you don't talk to that often. It could be, somebody across the table at a restaurant or something, or somebody on the internet. Have a genuine interaction and a conversation with somebody. Because I think the more people we do that with, the better off we will be as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. I like that. Great last words. Well, James, thanks very much for being on the show. As everybody knows, this is Fight the Burnout. It's all about helping you to perform at the max that you possibly can be. When we're burned out, we are slow, we're sluggish, we don't perform very well. Our bosses will see it, our family will see it, our kids will see it. So we want to perform at that max level. But if we're being drained all the time, we can't. So if you feel like you are being drained and you want direct assistance, send us an email at fighttheburnoutpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll help you out, because that's what we're here for. And make sure you listen to all these episodes, because every single person might say it might be the same definition, but they'll say it in a different way, so you can get a different perspective from it. That's why we interview people from all walks of life. And remember to, hit that notification bell, hit the like, hit the subscribe, so you don't miss any episodes. Until next time, our motto here is train hard, test easy. That becomes both physically and mentally, because we get tested every single day, and you want to make it so it's the easiest test in the world. Until next time, guys, we'll talk soon. Thanks very much.